full understanding to ensure education is a more effective and powerful force for good in the world. Over to you, Prof. Hugo.
So, welcome everyone to this wonderful new world that we're in terms of AI, with lots of debate about whether it's going to be as big as something like electricity and fire and changing humanity and the world, or whether it's just the next showcase, which is going to kind of be useful, but nothing more than that. That's not the debate for today. What the debate for today is, and the discussion for today is, how are we as academics going to use AI for our research and for our publishing? And basically in that situation, you're in a bit of what we'd call a pharmacon. That's what Derrida calls it. Pharmacon from the Greek, meaning poison and medicine. And that's what AI is for us researchers. It's definitely medicine, but it's also poison. And I'm going to try and get the balance between those two. I know that there's a lot of anxiety from all of us in terms of how this works. But what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and be pragmatic. And then after every 15 or 20 minutes, I'm going to ask us to go off and to go find some things out about certain AI research tools and certain AI writing tools, so that by the end of this, you haven't just sat in a session for a couple of hours, but you've actively got some trusty tools that can help you. So with that said, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share the screen. I'm going to be swapping between the screen and talking to you. I don't enjoy PowerPoints, but with this kind of a session, I think that it will help just to give some structure to it. So here we go. And I've labeled it using AI without tanking your academic career, because there are certainly going to be risks in terms of using it. You know, it's a very concerning thing when we kind of do it, and here's the golden rule for us. So I really want you to think of AI as your assistant. It's not an author, it's not a co-author. You're the primary investigator. So you approve, you verify, you take responsibility. And just to say that this is across the professions. So AI is being used in law, in engineering, in medicine, in all the top areas. And the basic rule of thumb at the moment is you have to make sure that you stand by what's been said and it's yours. So there has to be that ability to stand with it, no matter how you use it. In the end, that's the final rule. I am gonna try and show you a little bit later on for like a group that's interested, how you would actually use AI as a proper assistant. In other words, how you'd set it up to do some work for you. But I won't do that in the primary part of this session. So what are we talking about here, right? So how does it help you? What does it do that's really good for you in terms of AI? Well, the first thing is that it is really incredibly helpful. So what I want to say here is I have two AIs on my screen permanently working with me. And often I kind of do it in a voice mode rather than a written mode. I work it both ways, you know. So for example, if I was trying to think about an issue to do with how AI could be useful or dangerous, let me just kind of demonstrate it for you. I'll kind of let's see, I'll stop the share there. I'll escape there. Right. So I'm going to just open up. There we go. I've opened up AI. There's a It's a new chat, so I'm going to just share it with you again. Share the screen. I'm going to go into voice mode. Let's just get the new chat. It's not, so typically let's see if it's working. Doesn't look like it's working at the moment. This is almost guaranteed to happen. Ruth and myself tested it. Let's check. AI, can you hear me at the moment, or am I talking to myself? I'm going to come back to it later. Let's get back to the demonstration itself. I love it how it works. It works perfectly until you use it in these situations. Anyway, the point is what happens is I have it as a mechanism that's right next to me, and I use it as a thought partner. So whatever I'm writing, whatever I'm thinking about, I've got the AIs next to me, and I'm asking it questions. I'm asking it to do work for me. I'm asking it to look for articles. I'm asking it to rephrase something that I've been working on. So it's a permanent assistant which is sitting at my side. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You basically are in a situation where you've got a couple of research assistants working for you, and that's the way that you've got to think about it. But the AI isn't the primary investigator, so it can't design the study for you, and it can't interpret the results, and it certainly can't accept blame. Right? It's going to be your fault if that's the case. And just to speak personally about the experience I have for me using AI to do research, and for students using AI to do research. And there's a really huge issue, and that is when I'm doing the research, or when us, are doing research, we know the background, we know the content, we know the theories, we know the research already. That's our job. So we have this huge background situation where when we're working with AI, we are asking it questions, negotiating with it, telling it where it's right and wrong, telling it to go look harder, etc., etc. We do that because we've got all the schema in place to be able to do it. Our students are in a very, very different position. If they try to use AI the same way that we do, they'll end up getting overwhelmed with it. So for them, there's a situation where for us, we could experience it as extension, as augmentation. For a lot of our students, that experience it as amputation. It's not extension, it's amputation. If they try to use it in this way, it takes them over. They don't learn how to do research. They don't learn how to do analysis. They don't learn how to work out what the themes are. So there's real dangers for students. But I've got to be very clear here. For you as a researcher who's already familiar with your material and familiar with the literature, it's an astonishing tool that works right next to you. That's basically how I use it. Whenever it does something for me, I will always take that and I will always then rework it and rewrite it and kind of make sure that it's mine. So I treat it as a person who's a research assistant, literally, who I say, listen, go find this out, go do that out, get me a summary of the 10 papers and tell me what's going on in terms of the 10 papers. And when they come back, I work with that. It's absolutely a worthwhile thing to be doing. So let's say you've now got your new AI research assistant and you guys are working with ChatGPT, or you guys are working with Google Studio, or you guys are working with Perplexity, or maybe some of you are now working with Grok, or maybe some of you are working with Claude. Those would be tend to be the main ones. If you've got enormous concerns about privacy in terms of your data, then some of you here might be working with Llama, the Facebook version, where you can get it actually on your computer and it doesn't go anywhere. It's guaranteed to be completely safe. But you're using those different mechanisms. So let's take a look at where it shines, right? What does it really do well, and what am I using it for, so that you feel safe in terms of your writing and your research, that when you say to people you've used AI, you can say it with confidence and there's nothing wrong with it. There's no shame involved. So the first thing is I'm using it all the time to go out there and find stuff for me, scoping and search. What you've got to bear in mind is that mostly what AI has done is taken all of human data and all of human knowledge and compressed it into a probability matrix where it's all out there in different forms. And when you ask it a question about one particular thing, it configures it and it goes and looks for that information which it's got. Now, this has become increasingly, it's got increasingly locked into certain flows as people have realized that this information is really important and really vital. So more and more you're having to pay specialist AI research tools to kind of have more access to the top publishers. So the top publishers have now very quickly withdrawn permission for you to use their data and their articles, and the publishing houses are now selling that information on to specific research engines which you have to pay for to use. Even though you've done the research, you've published it, and all the journal's done is put it online. They are selling it on. So the next thing which I use it for is I find that I will always ask it to, it's sycophantic mostly. It's going to say, wonderful, you're doing well, excellent work, that's brilliant thinking. How did you think of that? You are just the world's biggest genius on earth. Like, well done, I bow in front of you. How can I help you more? That's not the way that I use it. I just ask it very simply, just say, please be more critical and please generate alternatives rather than my thought. And then what it does is it genuinely starts to generate alternative questions. And it just helps you to see what it is that you're not seeing as you do the work itself. Reading at scale. So the first thing I want to say is one of the biggest dangers of doing research with AI is that your reading of actual articles goes, and I'm going to stop the share here. Sorry, I'm going to go back on. I just want to rather talk. Is there an echo?
No, there is no echo from my side.
Okay. If you are experiencing an echo, it could be that you've got two, you've got your phone and your computer on at the same time, just to say if that's the case. So if you're using AI a lot, you stop reading. You stop doing the actual thinking and the actual research that you have to do. You start to get addicted to the papers being summarized for you. So all you do is you take the key paper that you're interested in a PDF form, you download it into ChatGPT and you ask for a critical summary. And it's fantastic. You don't just ask for a critical summary. What I do if I ask for it is I say, give me the logical argument, put it in a form of philosophical propositions that take you through the argument if it's qualitative. If it's quantitative, what you do is you ask it to specifically dissect the various stages of the argument and the moves that are made. And then it does it really, really well. But what happens is you start to stop reading the article and you start to depend on the summary. And then what starts to happen is you start to actually negotiate with the deeper art of what one human being is saying to another human being through a paper. So I just want to emphasize the key issue over here is that what you have to do when you're using AI is you must not use AI. You've got to get a book, you've got to get an article, you've got to go to a coffee shop, or you've got to go to your lounge, or you've got to go sit outside, you've got to sit with a pen and paper, and you've actually got to make notes and make sense of it in your own terms. I can't stress that enough as the baseline of what we're working on. But that said, often what happens is in the fields that I work in, I'm interested in 4 or 5 fields. And often what happens is a huge swathes of data and publications start to come in, which is very hard to deal with. And in those kinds of situations, I absolutely take those key reports or those key studies that have come from the United Nations or have come from some research organization or wherever, and they're often like 200, 300, 400-page reports. And what I do is I ask the AI to do a detailed summary for me, and I work with that. So there's no two ways about it, that it gives you the reading at scale you can do very efficiently. So I find that to be superb. The next thing, which is absolutely vital, is the fact that it structures your evidence. If you've got evidence in various forms, it can be data, it can be arguments, it can be philosophical principles, it can be quantitative, it can be qualitative. There's a situation where what it absolutely can do is it can take all of that information which you're doing, even if you've handwritten it and got tables and you've done it all kind of just on a notebook. Often that's what I do. I take the notebook and I take a photograph of it and I say, please, can you make sense of this in like a coherent form? And then what it does is it takes that and it structures the claims and the evidence, and it actually makes sure that the work that you're doing does make sense from your notes. So there's a situation where I very much do work with data and evidence. Now, there are going to be strong issues which are going to come up just now about what about the privacy of the data? Do we upload that kind of stuff? What about my paper that I'm writing? Do I upload my paper? Because then it's out there. And what happens when I send it to a publisher? And there's kind of like it's already, the ideas which I have are already out there. So we will talk to some of the issues later. But just to say, the next thing which I use it for when I'm writing is I will almost all the time after I've written a paragraph or I've written a section on my own, I will slot it in. Sorry. I will slot it in to AI and I'll ask it to do a critical reworking of it. And it really, and I kind of pride myself on being a good writer, but it's absolutely the case that it often finds better ways of phrasing it and better ways of putting the flow. It'll often pick up issues where I've repeated myself in certain ways. It'll often recommend that I order the paragraphs better. So it really does that well. And then another thing which it does is there's always a situation where you can upload diagrams, you can upload tables, and it'll translate those things for you and give you headings for that. So it's multimodal. So what I often do is I upload graphs or I upload diagrams and I ask it, what's going on here? And it does that. It does that for me. Okay, so that gets us into where it shines. So I'd firstly like to hear now from you, now that I've set it up in terms of, yes, I can, but we almost, I can share it for you guys. There it is. Is that good? So there you can see where it is that your research assistant shines. Okay, it helps you to do search, it helps you to read at scale, it helps you to structure your evidence, it helps you with the clarity and flow of your sentences, and it helps with accessibility, right? It helps you to do different diagrams and different things. This is where it'll betray you. Now, you guys know this, okay? It's not like you don't know this and this hasn't happened, and it's happened to me a lot. So the first thing it is it's incredibly good at fabricating references and quotes and all that kind of stuff. So it's genuinely a case where it's trying to please you. And what happens when you're doing your research and you ask it to go find some stuff for you on that research, and that research isn't there, it isn't in its zone, it then makes it up. And that's an incredible risk. We all know the stories of the lawyers who've presented in court and the cases that have been made up. I know for a fact from my own situation where I've taken one of my papers and I've put it into AI and I've said, strictly do a tight edit of this paper looking for mistakes. And then afterwards, I went into the paper and I had a couple of abbreviations, and it invented what the meaning of those abbreviations were. It gave it another name. So it really is dangerous in terms of that kind of thing. And basically, just to state over there really is a simple rule. The simple rule is, nowadays, in terms of your publications and your research, you have a DOI. You have some place on the internet where that article is. And basically, you have the discipline of making sure that every single paper is properly checked and that you have every single paper there. And that you've read every single paper that you've referenced. It really is as simple as that. It's just due diligence. But the dangers of it inventing stuff over there are enormous. I cannot stress that enough. The second thing is a very controversial danger in terms of your research and publications, and that is data leakage. Okay, there's a strong concern that if you put in kind of confidential or under review text into public tools, somehow what's going to happen is that's going to come out in the public domain. Now, I want to be clear that that is a risk and that you do have to be careful. So I'm saying that firstly. But the second thing is that the way that most AI systems work is they don't take your data and in huge specific chunks keep it somewhere and then use that paper which you've written. When someone asks for something, they then give that paper to someone else, and all of a sudden they can take it and use it, and there's dangers there. That's not how it works. What AI does when it gets all the data that it gets from you, using it and uploading stuff, is it grinds it down into a probability matrix. It grinds it into its already existing set of probabilities of how it works in the future. Because remember, it's a prediction machine. All it's doing is it's trying to predict for you what the next best word is for the thing that you want it to do. The next best word, the next best sentence, the next best paragraph, the next best chapter, because it can do it all the way up until there. So the danger of your data leaking in a form where it's used specifically against you in that form is very small. I'm not saying it's not there. What I'm saying is that the way AI works is that it grinds things down into probability zones. So the chances of it being used like that are very small. So if you strongly feel about it, I would say there's ways to get beyond it, as I said, by using a private LM. Go to Llama, which is Facebook. Just go to Facebook and Llama. You know Llama, L-L-A-M-A. Go there. Those LLMs you can download onto your machine and use it yourself if you have a proper machine. But it takes skill to do that, and it takes time, and you have to have a good machine. The next danger is that it really amplifies the biases that you are working with. It's not balanced, and it's very much a Western kind of knowledge base. And there's real danger that the non-English work done by other communities is lost. It's a genuine danger. And that's just to do with the post-colonial world that we currently work in and the way that English dominates, certainly the LLMs that we are working with. 2 more points, and then I want to take our first break. It is astonishing how when I take some of the work that I've done and I put it into AI and I ask it to start to work with it and to improve it, it very often makes it a lot worse, not better. And the reason why it does that is it tends to overstate and under hedge. So It's trying to make things as clear and crystal as possible. And when you've written your stuff, you've said, you know, it's like this, except in this case or that case, because probably this and that. When you put it in and you ask for an edit, what it can do is it can strip those out. And it can overstate stuff. It can start to say that this is definitely the case. And if you use AI in a generic way in your research, that's an absolute problem that it does. It starts to take stuff which you are only half sure about, and it overruns it. And then the next thing, and the final thing where there's dangers, and I'm speaking from my kind of experience, is that it loses my own academic voice. And I've really tried hard in terms of my academic voice of taking my papers, putting them into AI and saying, analyze my voice, get my voice, see where I am. So when I ask you to do an edit, you can do it in my style. And it can't yet. I have not found an AI that can do that. It cannot write like me. So there's a real danger when you do an edit that you remove your human ticks and your human tell signs. And what happens is it reads well, but it starts to lose the sense that a human being is talking to you. It almost becomes too perfect. You lose that academic voice. So that's the first kind of section. I mean, I still want to get into publishing. I still want to get into all the tools that we can use. But at a high level, that's the sense of, in terms of your own research, at a basic level, where it can help you and what your risks are. So I'd be interested in getting some questions and some feedback and responses now. And then we'll move on to the second session a bit later. I see some hands up, but I can't see them. So just take the mic and go. I'm assuming that that's possible. Samuel? And Alistair? Yo, okay. Samuel, why don't you go for it? Is that Murthy or Samuel? Samuel.
Okay, I see my mic is coming back to me, you know. Thanks, Wayne. It's very, very interesting. And check these are issues that I'm also struggling with. Can you hear me, Wayne?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So we get the question all the time from students, right, about taking their chapters, masters, even PhD students, taking their chapters, putting it into some AI space and asking AI to refine the language and to clean it up and make the paragraphs look more more appealing and more academic and that kind of stuff. My question then is about, it's not so much about diluting the academic voice, it's about the actual ownership of what comes back. And the legality behind this here, whether that intellectual property still belongs to the student, although the student might have drafted the initial, constructed the initial draft, but when it comes back out of the system, it remains as a permanent record in the system. So if a journal or the international examiner or an examiner of a PhD were to search for this particular piece online, in a particular database that they suspect it might have come from, it will come up as a reference from the database. What's your thinking on this? Because as I'm listening to you speak, you're speaking about putting your pieces into the system, and once it's captured in the system, it's no longer yours from where I'm sitting. What are your thoughts on this?
So it's it's a really complicated space, and this is not just happening to us. It's happening to artists. It's happening to musicians. It's happening across the board. To deal with the master's students first, I'd just be brutally honest, and I'd say that a lot of the time we're taking their work and we're handing it over to editors who are doing that kind of work anyway, right? A lot of our students are English second language speakers, and they're really struggling to, once they've done the hard work of actually trying to make sense of it, and they've done the reading and all that kind of stuff, we often hand it over to editors who do weeks and weeks and weeks of work to try and get that thesis up to scratch. And depending on how you work with your editor, either what your editor does at that point is they keep on sending it back to the student and assist the student does it. Or what happens is, and I know this happens, is what happens is the editor takes it and really works on it, tries to get it better. Now, the difference between a human being doing that and a AI doing that is not that large, except for the fact that, as you say, it's then gone into a public space. Or, but the question becomes, what is the nature of that public space? So if you're working in a chat, firstly, what you can choose to do, and it's come up in the notes, is depending on your AI use, you can specifically tell it not to use it for public purposes. So the AIs are now updating their terms of reference where you can make that choice. And the more principled AI LLMs like Claude, which is they're trying to be the most principled one, they'll have this explicit thing where you can actually explicitly say you don't want the data to go online. So those choices are starting to become more clear. In terms of ownership, certainly for my students, it's not the situation of them having written a first draft and it getting edited. That's not the issue. The issue is them generating the first draft by using AI. That's the issue. But can I ask that we separate that off to a separate discussion at some other time? And let's move on. Alistair, I see your hands up as well. And Samuel, your hands up. The first draw, whoever goes first.
So I'm awake. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. How's the train? Okay, I was going to comment on the on generating, the initial material with AI, but if you want to leave that to later, it's fine. I mean, my problem is basically just, with undergrads, everything I'm getting is AI generated. And it's, in our policy, we say, students, please use it ethically. And it's just so hard for them to do that because it's almost like, getting someone who's starving to walk past tables and tables of food, and not take it. Because, what it generates is so much better than what they can, easily generate themselves. So, yeah, telling them to be ethical, it's not really working. But in terms of using it as an assistant, I mean, what I would really like is for AI to, make my work life easier. And I'd really like to have it assist us with examining, like a PhD will take me a week to examine. And it would be really nice if we had like, prompts set up for, they might be school specific or discipline specific, that will, do some of the hard work for us, checking the references are okay. I mean, some companies, some advanced corporate companies are using it to sort of, filter out all the communications we have to deal with, So if you're getting 100 emails a day, it sifts out the important stuff that's got action items sort of next to your name. And I mean, I don't know how far away we are from sort of practically implementing that. Can we trust AI enough to do that? Yeah.
Okay, so two responses. The first response, let me just deal with this student issue for all of us in terms of how this is working. We're in the very early stages of how AI is actually working with pedagogy and with education. Now, the way that it's getting picked up in schools and the beginnings of universities that are starting to use it more systematically is what they do is they insist that the students and the learners actually work on AI. They work with AI next to them. And what happens is AI keeps a continual track of every single thing that they do and remembers everything that they do over the years that they do it and the different subjects that they do it. And what happens is the job of the AI in that situation is not to give them the answers and to write the stuff for them, but to act as a one-on-one tutor. Very much what old Bloom, our favorite Bloom's taxonomy. He wrote a paper a number of years ago where he talked about the 2 sigma improvement, where basically students jump from the 50th percentile to the 2% percentile, double jump, 2 sigma movement upwards if they get one-on-one tutoring. So there's now schools and universities that are adopting that mode with an AI tutor. But that AI tutor is not in the situation where our students are using it in such a way that they generate text for that. The AI tutor is actively helping them, asking them questions, sending them off to go do this work, giving them questions to answer and continuously monitoring them. And that's a public record. Now that's going to bring up its own issues for a whole lot of you guys in this room, right? That's going to sound like panopticon, surveillance, all that kind of stuff, right? So it's got its controversies on its own. But I just want to be clear that the way we're currently using AI is a serious problem for our students because they're amputating themselves. But in the near future, it's going to become a situation where it becomes a monitoring tool, which tracks what you're doing and analyzes what you're doing and gives feedback to us in terms of what you're doing. In terms of the situation with PhDs, so what I do is I strip the PhD of all the relevant information. I take out all those pages. I then upload the document, and I do exactly that. I develop a detailed prompt, and this is after I've read the thesis properly. So it takes me a day to read the thesis. And then after I've read the thesis, I start to work with it on AI, and I ask it all sorts of questions, and I ask it to do all sorts of things. And me and the AI together start to work in a way where we generate a report which is better than I could have written on my own. Or, to be clear, it would have taken me 2 weeks to do that report instead of a day and a half. So it's definitely got those advantages if you use it properly. And I personally see no reason for that not to be the way that we use it, as almost like a research assistant. You say to your research assistant, Alistair, you say, go and check all the references in this thing and see if they actually correlate to the in-text references.
Yeah, so Wayne, yeah, I mean, I've actually tried that, and it wasn't as simple as I thought it would be. You know, I thought, wow, this is a perfect tool for that. But you know, in the text, you've got like you know, Hugo et al. And then in the reference list, you've got Hugo, Jennings, Kluler, you know, etc. And AI actually battles to, you know, unless you're clever with your prompts and, you know, work it out, it actually battles to match up those references. So, yeah, I mean, just sort of from an institutional point of view, it would, you know, almost be nice for us to you know, provide staff with some detailed prompts that do things. It's almost like code, you know, that does stuff.
It is code.
We can adjust, you know, for our particular need. Yeah.
And to say we are doing something like that. So we
Okay.
are generating something like that at UKZN, and we will try to get it to you as soon as we've kind of got it closer. And then Samuel and Fazana. Samuel, your hand's been up for a while, bro, and it's like I don't hear your voice coming through.
Wayne, can I also say that there are 4 questions in the Q&A, excluding Fazana because she's got her hand up. Okay, thank you.
Okay, cool.
Hi, it's Fazana. Can I go ahead, or are you
Go for
waiting for
it.
Samuel?
Go
Okay,
for it.
so it's the same question I put down. Thank you for a fascinating talk. I just wanted to get an idea, how does using AI as a research assistant affect, submitting work through Turnitin? And are we still submitting it through something like Turnitin?
Good question. Okay, so firstly, Turnitin works with plagiarism. So it's very good with picking up plagiarism, and that's why we use it. It has got an AI detection tool, and there are hundreds of AI detection tools out there. None of them work properly or effectively or legally. So unless there's a tell sign, like at the end of the paragraph, it's got like a ask ChatGPT thing, or some kind of thing which has been left there afterwards. It's going to be very hard to work out. It's easy to do a legal case against plagiarism because you can show the difference. With AI, it's very difficult to prove. So I just want to mark that and to say that in those terms, what often happens in that situation is a lot of the universities across the world have stepped away, and the publishing houses have stepped away of making an accusation or a claim that it's AI generated. And rather they start to ask for, please, can you give us evidence of the work that you did and how you worked on this? And I'll get to that with the journals afterwards, and I hope to deal with that question substantively. I see that there's questions in the group as well. Or Fazana, you want to say something?
No, just thank you very much. Thank you.
Cool. Ruth, you're saying that there's other questions in the chat. I'll look at them now. Are there any other questions before we take a break?
There's Samuel who's unmuted now. Don't know if you want to let him go ahead.
Samuel.
Yes, please. I wanted to find out something. There was an instance where I was writing, and this writing was done manually by myself. Afterwards, I took it through what do you call it? Checker, AI checker AI detector to find out. And then I realized that most of the words that I did manually without using any AI indicated red, meaning it was AI generated. So sometimes I have a challenge when it comes to AI, because when I'm writing, I'm not an AI fan. I'm not somebody who likes using AI, but there are times that after writing, you put it into AI detector to check, and you see some traces of AI. So how do we go about it? Then somebody will say that you use AI when you know very well that there isn't any AI component in your writing.
So just as I've said, all the big institutions have stepped away from making an accusation of AI use. Plagiarism use stands. If there's a situation where it's obvious use of AI through some artifact, or there's a situation where the student refuses to talk about the work, we're talking about a student. And certainly I gave a keynote the other day and stood up and delivered the keynote without a note. And so what happens is that makes it, that you've done it yourself because you own it. But to be clear, AI has learned how to write from all the best writers in the world. And often better your writing is, often the more it can look like it's AI generated. So for example, AI loves to construct sentences logically. So what it'll do is it'll start off with a phrase, and then it'll put a M dash, and then it'll give 3 things which go with that. It'll close the M dash, and then it'll go on to a statement which moves on from that, and then a summary of it afterwards. So it'll construct these nice logical sentences. Now, I love using brackets and M dashes and all that kind of stuff, but it's a huge tell sign of AI. So there are these situations, but I'll stand by the point that you can't take a statement that it's been AI generated by some kind of app as being genuinely the case that it's been AI generated. That's not legally It's not legally valid. Is that good? Okay, so I'll go through the footnotes that are in the chat, and I'll respond to them afterwards. But it's now 12, quarter to, what's it, about quarter to 1. Can I ask that in the time that you have, can you just go, if you want, and just look up Google LM, and just open it out. And if you've got a Google account, you should be able to use it. I'm not going to use it specifically, but if you just get a sense of how the Google LM works, it's a good example of a tool which has got no usage outside of its use. So in other words, it's completely safe, but it can really help you as a researcher with materials. And I will give a demonstration of some of these materials, which are quite helpful afterwards. But can I say that we meet again at, is 5 to 1 good? 8 minutes. Ruth, what do you think?
Good, Wayne.
Cool. Okay, so when I say 5-2, I mean it. I'm not saying, like with my students, I'm not saying 5-2 meaning 1 o'clock. At 5-2, I'm going to be ready to go again. If there are any other comments which you want, please just put them in the comments now. I'll review them now and try to raise them in the second chat session we have after I've done the second part of the presentation. Cool. Okay. Let me just see. I think we are back, or I'm back. So what I want to try and do is bear in mind that the way we're going to work the session is we've got to get it into a point where on the one side we're talking about how you use it to help you with research, and then the second question, how you use it in terms of how you deal with editors or how you as an editor work. Both of those, and how you respond. Like I see Nad raised a question which kind of takes us into this second part, which is you get you get your you send in a paper and the reviews come back and there's 15 things you've got to do, and what you do is you take your paper, you load it into ChatGPT, you put in the 15 requests and you ask ChatGPT to make sense of it, and then what it does is it makes sense of it, it organizes the different questions into some kind of sense making, and then it makes suggestions for changes, and then you work with that and you change your paper and you hand it back. And Nad's asking, you know, what happens in that situation? What do you say? And my only response is, what I found is, if you're honest about how you've used it, the editors and the reviewers appreciate it. So that's been my rule of thumb. And to be clear, also when I do reviews of papers, and increasingly I've had to do a lot of reviews, but a lot of the reviews are for developmental journals where the papers that have come in are not great, to be honest. And the amount of work it takes to get that paper from a rough and ready paper, which is kind of, you can see potential, to get it ready is huge. And what I'll do is I'll write to the editors and I'll say, here's I've read it, I've made sense of it. After I've made sense of it and the recommendations I've gone into ChatGPT and I've asked to generate some suggestions to help this person improve it. And I've sent both in to the editors. And often what happens in that situation is they'll say, thank you very much, that's useful, but you've got to be very careful of the journal you're using, because this is a changing terrain. Increasingly what's happening now is a lot of the journals are insisting on a far tighter policy, which I'll get to, which they're insisting that you don't use AI at all, because of nervousness to do with the things which Murthy was talking about earlier and how it can percolate through the system. But before we get there, I want to just show you the tool that I use, which is safe. It's simple, and what happens is it's Notebook LM, and it just allows you to upload whatever articles that you want, and then once you've uploaded the articles, you can ask questions about it, you can ask for summaries, and I often generate either videos or I generate, you know, the podcast story, how you generate podcasts. I just want to demonstrate to you what it actually looks like. So let me do it in such a way that when I do it, I'll just open it up like that. So I'm going to share my screen now. There we go. Share. Oh, I want to share sound. Okay. Right. So there it is. You try Notebook LM. I've got some notebooks. It's got some notebooks. Can I just check with a thumbs up? I'm talking now. Can you hear me, or by asking it to do the sound of the machine, you can hear me? Okay, cool. Now, basically what happens with these notebooks, and I'll use an example. There's a whole lot of examples that we can use. Let's see. Maybe I'll use one of my own ones. This is, I'm doing comparative education and I'm doing research on that. So here is an example of a Finland story. It's about education in Finland. And what happens is you download the document onto the one side, and then you can ask all sorts of questions to it, and it'll respond specifically to that document. So you have a situation where when you're thinking about it, you know that you're working with that document itself. And then what you can do is, once you've done that, you can ask it to generate a situation where it'll generate like a mind map for you. So here's the Finnish education system that I'm working with, and what it does is it summarizes for you. It gives you the different phases that it's working on, what they look like. You can go into detail if you want in terms of that. Some of the stories that I've worked on, the keywords and definitions. Sorry, it's got those in. You know, so you've got a situation where there's the keywords. And basically, this is a situation where it just generates a nice mind map for you, where you have a really good summary of the paper, which you can use and you can think about. So it's deeply impressive in terms of those things. And then basically what it can also do is it can also generate I often put it into a podcast form. Now it is American.
Imagine a country with no school rankings at all, no high-stakes exams until you're practically an adult, like 18. And forget those elite schools parents fight to get their kids into. Instead, picture this.
Right? So all that's happening over there is what I've done is it's done a podcast, but the podcast is specific to the document. So what happens is often if I haven't got time or I'm cooking or something like that, I'll put it in podcast form and I'll give it a listen to or run it through. And obviously this works well for your students as well. And then finally what you can do is, and this is more for students by the way than for your research, but you can do this with your papers. So what you can do is once you get a paper published, the journals are going to ask for you to promote that paper. And I'd recommend that you do it yourself. You do an interview yourself, you do questions yourself and all that kind of stuff. Another way of doing it is you upload your paper and you ask for a generated thing, and this you just upload on YouTube.
Hey everyone, today we're diving into a real puzzle, the Finnish education system. It's held up all over the world as this shining example of excellence, right? But it looks almost nothing like the
And then what you can do if you look on the side is you'll see
system that was just making everything worse. So picture this, right after getting its independence, Finland basically tears itself apart in this brutal civil war.
So all I'm showing over there is basically it does it in a summarized format in a discussion voice, which is American granted, and with a slide summary, which actually gives it to you and you can hand it in. So it's really, really useful for you to use both for your own stuff, because you can upload any document that you want and you can upload it in a series. If you're doing research on something, I just upload 15, 20 documents on that. And then I can ask it questions. I can get the mind map of all these documents together and I can ask it to combine them all and do a podcast. And when I'm tired, I can play that and listen to that separately. So there are all these ways of making sure that the research you're doing and the data that you're gathering and the literature that you're working on, there's different modes that you can actually make sense of it in, both for yourself and for your students. Yes, it is for free. It's completely for free. There are situations where with any of these things, just to say with Notebook and these other ones, the basic version is for free. But if, for example, you wanted to set up a community of practice where you're all sharing it together, rather than just doing it yourself and sending them the stuff separately, in other words, you want a whole community to work in one area, then you have to pay for it. It's always a situation where the base model is for free, but they're using it as a hook to get you into something further. There is a university guideline to the generation of research, and we will send that to you. I think it's been posted on the group. I'm not sure yet, but I'm hoping it is. Okay, right. Let me just get it back to the slideshow on the on my PowerPoint. There you go. From current slide. And then let's share it. Share. Share. I don't know why you guys prefer the slideshow to like rather than having someone talk to you, but I understand it. I do get it, but my preference is to just like talk to people about it. So just to summarize where we were, there's really the 5 habits which I want you to focus on in terms of your own research is just always make sure you keep the friggin' file and the document. You keep it next to you, and you just make sure that you're working with it as well as with the AI. So unfortunately, I know that this is an issue. You're just going to have to invest in it. You can tell at the moment that actually I'm working on 2 huge screens because that's how much I need. I need to have 2 AIs open. I need to have my document open, which I'm working on, and I need to have the documents, the actual articles, which I'm working on there as well. And you're working with all of them at the same time. And that really helps keep you safe. Otherwise, there will be nothing more embarrassing than an invented claim. I cannot stress enough, even if you've gone through every single reference that you've worked on and you've gone through every single DOI, just before you send it to the friggin' journal, I cannot overemphasize this enough. You click on every single one of those to check that they actually work. Because often what happens is, even when you go to the site and extract it from that, there's minor failures, and you can suddenly get a page unfound. Then if you are worried about privacy, and you should be to some extent, just take the document and just strip it of the front and back pages and those kinds of details, and then it's a lot safer. I'm not saying it's a guaranteed solution, and there's all sorts of complexities with how data's the new oil and they're going to use it to grind us. I hear all of that. But a simple rule of hygiene is just strip it of those pages and then put it in. If you do get accused of overusing AI in some form, as I said, the journals are going to be very careful about making a direct accusation. What they're going to do is they're going to ask you for just how did you do it? The thing to do is to keep some kind of a track of how you used it, what version you used, and that kind of stuff. Now that I say that here, I don't do it myself. But the main AI tool that I work with is ChatGPT 5. It is a paid version. It costs you $400 a month. But basically what happens is you're paying for memory. So it keeps all your chats there and it remembers all of them. So at the moment when I'm often working with stuff, I can't remember because I'm getting old. I can't remember which article I was working with there, and I'm working with 20 articles and I can't remember which oak at this time said what. And because it's all kind of logged into the memory of AI, it's got your whole history of chats. When you ask it questions, it can pull up anything that you've written in your past. So that's really, really useful. But it also means that if a journal had to ask for a track, you can just go back there and you can show them the track. And then, so really that's the rule set. So let's get to part B. Getting past the gatekeepers. Okay. So now, the first thing is, and in the, you guys are going to come across it soon, right? We've been working at UKZN in a really excellent working group led by Donrich, trying to work out the AI policies for the university. And to be clear, the big summary takeaway is that we have to use AI responsibly and decently, but we cannot not expect people to be using it. So we've got to get very clear that it's a highly productive thing to use, but it's also incredibly dangerous. So if you want the sentence summary, it's something like that. You can't use AI as an author, right? People have tried. They're not a legal person. So bang, can't do that. You as the author, basically the big thing is when you send that paper off, you are responsible for every word and you're responsible for every reference. That's the basic rule of that. And then increasingly, and now I'm talking about different, what I did before this session, I went through some of the major groups that are working in terms of ethical publication and ethical research. There's one called COPE, and there's a couple of other ones. Their stuff is updating all the time, and I'll show you some of them later if we have time. But basically, increasingly, their rule of thumb is to say exactly what I've said here. I've just summarized it for you. You are responsible, and don't upload someone else's manuscript or doctorate without either stripping it completely of any identifying information, or rather putting it into something like Notebook LM, which is a curated place. It doesn't move anywhere else. Or even better, just go use Claude, the most ethical one, and just give it a direct instruction that it mustn't use it for anything else. It's curated. So those are some safe ways to work across that. To be clear, and I have to say this honestly, the reviewers and the editors are currently saying never upload someone else's manuscript, but everyone's doing it. Just because that rule's there doesn't mean that it's not being done by everyone that I know of. So much so that people who are cleverer than I am with AI are now in the articles which they're sending off are putting in hidden prompts so that when the AI actually is asked to do the review, because the AI does the review and then it's signed off, what happens is the hidden prompts make it a positive review rather than a negative review. So there's people sending in articles at the moment which smuggle in a forced prompt to make the AI say that it's a worthwhile paper. So there's interesting work going on that level. So the second thing is, and this is what I've been doing, and it really does work. I kind of explained it when I'm working with editors and I write to them and I say to them, I've done the review, but I've used this to help me. Can I send this forward to the person? And then what's happened is the editors have often said yes. And then just a gratifying moment over here, because I wouldn't have done this without the AI. I was an editor myself, and guys over here who know me in education know that I was a brutal editor. If it wasn't a good paper, I just dismissed it out of hand. I didn't have time to do the developmental work that it takes to take a paper and really work on it. It's just I had other things to do. It's horrible to say, but that was really the case. But what I found now is if I use AI properly, I can definitely do developmental work on papers from other people and send them and tell them that I've done that. And what's happened is after the papers have got published, there have been situations where people have reached out to me to say, thank you very much. If it wasn't for you, the paper would not have got published. And that wasn't me, okay, because I know who I was 10 years ago. That wasn't me. 10 years ago, it just wouldn't have got published, full stop. So there's ways which it can be used very productively. So just be honest, be specific, say how you've used it, say when you've used it, say where you've used it. It really is like that. And do that. Increasingly, the journals are developing AI policies. They weren't there 3 months ago when I was sending in articles. They're there now, depending on Elsevier or Springer, and depending on the contracts they've signed to sell on their work, which is your work, to other AI companies so that they can use it for research and tools. So let's be clear, there's a game within a game within a game here. If you've used it for editing, to help you with the structure or for a little bit of phrasing, there is no issue with that whatsoever in any journal I've ever come across, right? The issue comes if you've used it to analyze the data, if you've used it to help you generate the themes. And even there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's just that you've got to be clear that that's what you've done. And the other good rule of thumb which I use is when I send the paper off, I will say in the cover letter that this is how I've used it. Those are the situations. And just to be clear, Donrich and others who are working in this space have done the same. They're just upfront with it. This is how I've used it. This is what I've done. and it's appreciated when it's done like that in an honest way. So the next thing is this detection story, which we've talked about. All these detectors that are out there, they are not verdicts, they're hints. A better thing to look out for is not whether the AI wrote the text, it's whether the data has been fabricated, invented. When I've used the tool to do some statistical analysis, I got recently, it's now in the news. There was a paper which was published about how the SETAs are sector education authorities, training authorities, who've got billions and billions and billions of friggin' rand, and who training people like us at universities are training people, except they're for minuscule qualifications which mean almost nothing and don't get people work or jobs from it. The analysis came out which was like, this is how much it's costing. And what I did was I ran it through AI because it was a long document and started to ask it questions and get stuff. And what happened was it mostly worked, but it got things wrong. It kind of worked out what I wanted. And what I wanted it to say was that the SETAs are far more expensive in terms of training than the universities are, even though the universities are expensive. And then it started to push the analysis in that direction. So you've got to be really careful of that. If you are an editor, don't accuse the person of using AI unless it explicitly says ChatGPT said this or some comment over there. Don't. Send in a question, ask to clarify. Did you use AI? How did you use it? And even then, you've got to be very careful of escalating it without evidence at the moment, without proper evidence. And let's be clear, a detector which says that it's AI generated is not evidence. This is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. So there's a situation where if the person says, I've used it to help me with editing, or I've used it to help me with translation, that's legitimate. I've just got a paper accepted in a historical, a really top historical journal. And basically the guys who are working there are from friggin' Europe, and they know their Latin, and they know their Greek, and they know their German. And I don't know any of that. Right? And what I had to do was I had to actually take the Latin documents and ask for a translation and get a translation, because there wasn't an English translation of it. And it gave me an English translation, which was reasonably good. And what I then was able to do was I was able to write to the editors, and I was able to say, look, I don't read Latin, but what I did was I got this translation, and here's the translation, this is what I've used. There's no issues with doing that whatsoever. You've got to be very careful of false positives, where it comes out positive but it isn't, right? And then the rule of thumb which I use is the way that I judge the research is there good data? How did they do the research? Right? What's the amount of research that they did? If I had to ask for the data, would they give it to me? How did they do the analysis? What was the procedure? So the criteria for accepting papers for me as an editor now has shifted from, is it well written, is it a good argument, or that kind of stuff. It really has become, I look straight in at if they've done decent research. And if they've done decent research, then I will help them. And if I'm reviewing a paper and I can see that the research is good, but the paper's cuck, what I'll do at that stage is I will step in and I will help, and I will use AI to help that person at that point, and I will say so. Okay, so that gets us to part B. So I'm going to stop sharing. Questions? Okay, Alistair, I can see you first, so go for it, and then we'll just keep going.
Yeah. Okay. Wayne, just something interesting that I noticed happening recently. The kind of work that we do is, often has field trials, and what journals seem to ask for now is pictures of equipment installations as sort of, kind of proof that it's original and that what you described is, actually existed. What you said about, trying to, look at the raw data and the fact that, that kind of original information can be provided, I think is finding clever ways in which to, authenticate your research,
Absolutely.
showing that raw data, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. 100%. It's become the quality of the data that you're collecting has become the new gold in a thesis. It's less the literature review and those kinds of things, which can now be carried by intelligent and worthwhile use of AI, can still be carried. Decent data, which you've actually gone out and found about and collected and worked with, becomes the tell sign, becomes the modern tell sign. Charmaine, your hand was up. Is it down again?
When I posted a question in the chat,
Oh, yeah.
I'm asking me if you could read it and respond.
Post-humanist thinking supports, encourages the understanding of our entanglement with technology and distributed ownership of scholarship across human and more than human elements. Yes. Okay. So that is post-humanism. And that is like the cyborg. It's like, on the one side, firstly, it's a cyborg story. You augment yourself. And secondly, it's like a distributed kind of scholarship where a whole number of people are working on it. Right. But no, the UKZN policy is specifically directed at issues which would have to do with legal ramifications and those kinds of things as well. So there's a situation where authorship has to be claimed and it has to be clear. I get the argument, but I'm just saying that there's a situation where at a certain point it stops, and it stops with you, and you have to take ownership of it. You can't say, my post-humanist cyborg self, which was augmented and distributed across the universe, all of that is responsible for what's going on, and me, well, I only have that much responsibility, no more. I'm joking, Murthy, but there's definitely a situation. These discussions did happen, and with the legal minds in the room, they were like, it's a very important thing to consider, absolutely, but at a certain point, we've got to get clear on where the legal position stands, and up until and when the legal position changes, we've got to be very careful about compromising that as an institution, as a legally formatted institution with a certain task.
Yeah, thanks for that, Wayne. I understand what you're saying. Right? So, but everything you're saying so far is suggesting distributed ownership of scholarship, right? The way you're suggesting we use AI, which is like the way I'm using it, actually. And but it worries me, about maybe an overriding waiver or caution that we need to give to the group is not to take you literally at your word and everything, because your opening comments spoke about you don't want to tank your career, and it's the same kind of question to a master's and PhD student. You don't want to tank your master's study or your PhD study after all of this work, and it's about how we use this AI space responsibly, ethically. Even all those terms are becoming so vague and subject to multiple interpretations about what's ethical use. So maybe a comment I'm making is like, I appreciate this workshop. It opens up things, but there's so many gray spaces that even the legal policy documents, you know, the undertone of having read the policy documents is that ultimately the responsibility lies with you as a supervisor. That you will carry the can if your student
Yeah.
comes up short. Am I reading it correctly?
No, absolutely. So just as it always has been, Murphy, there's a situation where you as a supervisor, that's why it's embarrassing. For example, if you send off a thesis and then the guy comes back and says it was plagiarized, or you know, other versions of this, because as the supervisor, you knew the student, you were working with the student was handing in your work, and you're the expert in that area. You know, so yeah, it does fall on the due diligence of the supervisor to get that work done. But you're right. Let me just firstly say, it's not only grey, it is evolving at a rapid pace, and the things which I'm saying now could be outdated within the space of 3, 4, 5, 6 months. So the key organizations which are doing this kind of stuff, like COPE, and there's a couple of others, you know, which are trying to work with publishing ethics and that kind of stuff, they are changing all the time. I'll send up some of the links if you want. I've got them there of the very latest conversation which happened in that sector on this question, and all the issues which are arising here arose there. But what had happened was, in the space of the month or two, these things had started to change, and they had to send the updated stuff which is going on. Faisal? Was it Farzana? Is it Farzana or Faisal? How does the hand work?
Faisal.
Cool.
Mohammed. While
Yeah.
we're waiting for Faisal, there are other questions in the Q&A section as well. Thank you.
Cool. Is it Q&A or the web chat? Am I being stupid here?
Please try both.
Oh, okay. Well, put it in the chat. I don't know where the Q&A is. I'm a novice when it comes to Zoom Workplace.
Okay. Faisal wants to come through, and maybe I'll read out the Q&A ones for you.
Oh no, I
Just
see
can't
them now. Okay, no, I've got them. Sorry.
Okay, great. Okay, Faisal, you good to go?
Hello?
Yeah.
Hi, Prof. You get me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Now, thank you for the presentation. This is my second presentation for me to attend. I'm attending from Kenya. Now, I have one request and one question. Because I've been listening, I've been forced to put on both a laptop and a phone to hear clearly because the voice was low on the laptop. Is it possible to receive some PowerPoint presentation that you have after the presentation?
Yes, PowerPoint and a more extended document. We've got both of them, and we'll post them to the group afterwards.
Thank you. Then the question now. I've been doing this. I'm now on my final stage of my PhD. I'm in School of Agriculture, UKZN. I've been doing it remotely with my supervisor. Is it possible to be allowed by UKZN to access some of these platforms like Consensus, Chat, GPT, and maybe those that are can allow me to generate the end notes and turn it in? Is it possible to be allowed to access them? And what is the procedure?
Okay, so good question. And to say that we're trying to move forward, and I hate to take a UKZN voice, right? Let's be clear. I'm not the irk you want to be talking with the UKZN voice, okay? But I have been involved in some of these working groups. So yes, we are looking at it. The one strategy would be that what we do is we buy a whole lot of licenses to, for example, ChatGPT Pro,
yes,
or the paid version. And then what we ask is for people who are really interested in using it to that level, because we know it's not going to be the full UKZN staff and student body talking about the masters and the doctorate students. It's going to be a limited set. And what we do is we do provide those paid versions to those people to use for free, with UKZN providing that. But that's a future position, and it's not clear that it's going to happen. My strongest recommendation to you is to start to get familiar with some of these AI groups which do this kind of work. For example, do the work of checking your DOIs, do the work of checking your references, do the work of actually helping you find what other references are out there. All you've got to do is go onto your own AI and just ask it that question and see what it comes up with. And to say that that's a rule of thumb for everyone in this room is don't be scared to ask it these questions and then chase them. Then, another point which has come up, this Grammarly story, right? Yeah. Grammarly is completely fine. There's no problems with using Grammarly. With Grammarly, what you're doing is it's coming up with a huge set of corrections. When I use it with my doctoral students, it can often come up with 3,000 or 4,000 corrections. And what happens is you can't just push accept all 4,000 corrections, because at least 10% of those corrections are completely wrong. So you have to apply your human judgment every single time with every single thing to make sure that it's done. So there's no issues with using Grammarly. That's not regarded as AI usage. You don't even really have to declare to a journal or to a thesis thing that you've used Grammarly. It's just good practice. It's like, the way I put it, it's good hygiene. It's like you assume that, someone's kind of brushed their teeth and like gone for a shower. So other questions? I can see some of you are just being funny over here. What's the stance on UKZN AI used by masters and doctoral students? It's not a percentage cap. It has to be a situation that as the supervisor knows that it's your work. It has to be your work, non-negotiable. If you've used it for editing, and if you've used it to assist with some of the analysis, you have to specifically say so. But let's be clear, in terms of a master's or a doctorate, there's such a variation in the way that examiners are working with this. You've got some examiners who will be, that's fine. You've got other examiners who will be, that means that it isn't your work. So the risk you take on by saying that you've used AI to help you with your thesis is enormous at the moment. And I would just strongly recommend that for your theses, you use it almost mainly to help you with editing, and with some form, if you help it to do the analysis, you keep a very clear track how you've done the analysis yourself with your supervisor, and then you've got AI to help you, and that you and your supervisor have then vetted and checked it systematically, and you can show that with explicit proof. Okay. Say again?
Thank you so much for the clarification.
Pleasure. Nice to hear your voice from all the way from Canada. Kenya, sorry. Canada, not Canada.
Yeah, East Africa.
Can I deal with some of the other questions afterwards? Because we're starting to run out of time. I just want to get to part 3. Is that good? And then we can see where it goes. And do you guys want a 5-minute break? And we start. I'll need quarter of an hour to do the. And let's be clear, for those of you that want to leave now. In the third part, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and deal with where AI is going in the future, where it currently is and where it's going in the future, and how we've got to think about using it for our research and for our writing and for our publishing in a world which is going to radically change in the next couple of months. So I'm going to try and answer that question. But if you're not interested in that, it was good to hang out with you guys for a couple of hours. But for the rest of you, I'll see you at 2:45.
Did you ask AI that question, Wayne? Where's
Eh?
it going?
No, I looked at the bottom of my screen. I'm horrified. Time's gone quickly. Anyway, cool. Is that good?
Yeah,
Quarter
that's-
two. And then for those of you that are just interested and you want to use that time not to go for a bathroom or have a cup of coffee, etc., look up Sci Space AI Research. Sci Space AI Research. SCI Space. Sci Space. And the reason why I've mentioned it is because those are the bad guys. Those are the guys who want to generate all the work for you, want to generate articles for you. What Murthy's been talking about is being really risky. So those guys are out there. There's bad actors and there's good actors. And I need to show you some of that. But we'll leave that. I hope I've dealt with the two questions: how you use your research, how you use AI for your own writing and research, and what the journals are asking for. And so you're welcome to go off or come back for another 15 minutes.
Wayne, while we're waiting, can I ask you something?
Yeah. We're going to start now, but ask Murthy.
Yeah, so I'm struggling with this issue of ownership of writing. One of the attributes, one of the qualities we look for in a high-level PhD candidate is the ability to write at this level, high-level conceptual writing. And there's a danger of students ceding that responsibility to AI. So when we pass over this thinking to AI, and AI is doing the writing for you, I mean, it's highly problematic. Like maybe just your thoughts on that, about the ownership of the writing and the need to have these high level academic writing skills that a PhD candidate ought to have and develop, and whether the kind of uh, techniques that you're suggesting that can be used, whether we're compromising that aspect of the work of a PhD candidate.
Yeah, so I mean, we must carry this on afterwards. But the big thing for me is that we've already seeded that argument a long time ago with the way we use editors. So if you're dealing with good, strong English second language speakers who are doing good work, but the actual writing is really struggling, we've conceded that a long time ago. AI has just made that very efficient, and like with a lot of other professions, there's a real risk for certain kinds of editors to lose work. But to be clear, what's happened is the editors that I know.
Sorry, can I just contest a bit of a myth here?
Can I ask that can we just take it just now, Matthew? Because I really want to get into this. Otherwise, we've got like 12 minutes, if you don't mind. But stay afterwards. Let's chat. Okay, so welcome back for the 10 of you that are left. The 218 of you that are left. Okay. Look, what's happening at the moment is that the space is moving very quickly and it's consuming the world. So we all know the story of the data centers and all the electricity that they need, and the fact that it's going to be this huge outpouring of kind of investments that happen. And what's going to happen is certain types of AI are going to basically become integrated part of our lives. And there are debates about how it's going to happen, and if it's already got the heights that it has. There's all sorts of debates there. But what I'd like to do is I'd just like to sketch out what I know to be some of the dangers and the benefits. And I want to start off with the danger, and I just want to share the SciSpace website with you. Right, so this is SciSpace. I think it costs, the free version is crappy, but once you get to the paid versions, there's all sorts of pricing that can happen. But I just want to show you what it actually, one of the things it sets out to do. It says, write research papers with confidence, powered by AI. So what it does is it helps you find, edit, and cite from 280 million papers, and then you ask it the question, it goes and does all the research, it gets all the papers, it then does the literature review based on those papers, and then it writes the paper according to your specifications. And after you've done that, it then, you can then export it. Done writing your research paper, export it. And literally that's what people are doing. They're using this site to actually generate papers with not doing any work themselves at all. Okay? Now the issue is that that's the AI writer, right? But you could have the paraphraser, where what you do is you write your own stuff on the one side, and then it shifts it on the other side for you. And it can make it longer, it can make it vary. Do you want it to be more fluent? Do you want it to be more creative? Do you want it to be more formal? And you put your text in and it paraphrases it for you. It does it automatically, right? It's got the PDF where you can chat about things with it, which is nice. It's got the literature review section where you put in your literature review query. and then it goes and finds all the papers that it has access to, and it starts to give them to you on the one side. You get all the papers, all the links, and then it starts to combine them and work out what's going. So we're in a situation where it is now completely possible to completely fake the fact that you've actually done the work if you wanted to use it unethically. And it's sites like this SciSpace, which on the one side can look incredibly useful, and it is useful if you wanted to use it. But on the other side, it's these kinds of sites that universities and publishers are starting to explicitly ban in terms of the work that we can do. And these sites are going to grow, not disappear. Really, really concerning. Okay, so let's get back to the situation of where are we going to. Now, you guys will have heard of this thing coming out as the AI agents. Now, the problem is there's been a lot of hype about agents, and it hasn't worked as well as it should yet, but it's getting better and better as it goes along. But there's a really simple way that I want you to think about it, because all of us should be starting to think about using this thing in our future. Basically, what you do with agents is you set them up as your research assistants who've got dedicated jobs to do, and they do it all the time in the background. And then what happens is, it's like you're managing a workforce. And then what happens is the work that they do gets presented on your desk each morning. And then what you do is you look at the work, you review it, you apply your mind, you make sense of it, and then you keep on your daily work. But now you're working with a bunch of research assistants helping you. So for example, if you're working on a number of lit reviews, you can set up some screens and some search engines to various assorted places, which will just continuously search them. Find out what the new papers are in your criteria, deliver them in your box with some summaries and some notes and some sense making of it. And what happens is you don't go out on any one day and decide that that's what you're going to do. You've just set that up as a part of your necessary work as an academic, keeping track of current research in your area. But instead of spending your friggin' days going through all these journals and trying to find the stuff, and then you get sidetracked because this looks interesting, which is valuable, right? So that's how I find out stuff, right? So it's incredibly valuable. But to have a situation where this work comes in a consolidated way, the work that you're interested in, is really valuable. To say that in terms of coding agents, I haven't gone into it, but the coding side of AI has got better and better and better. And with coding, basically what you're doing is you're trying to set up a certain format where whatever you feed into it, it'll generate a very specific style based on the code. So for example, you could have a situation where you set up a code which asks it to extract this, the author, the title, the paper, the basic information on it, and it'll do that for you, and it'll do that for every single paper that it comes across, and it'll put it in a Google file or a Word file or something like that so you can pick up and use it. The third thing which you could set up continuously is a visualization agent, where no matter what the data is, you're continually asking it to put it into mind maps or into diagrams or into some kind of visual form, so that I'm very visual in terms of that. So that when the stuff comes, you don't have to spend hours trying to visualize it in different ways. Those visualizations are there for you. And you've got the agent, your research assistant, your student, to be basically spending their lives asking, how can I turn all this information into interesting visual forms? So what I'm trying to say for the end point of where we're going is that every one of us is going to have a situation where we've got to start to think about the fact that we need research assistants to help us to perform at a higher level and at a quicker level. Because as these metrics start to take off, the metrics of academic work are going to increase. And it's tragic because actually the nature of academic work is slow and considered, and it's sitting with a book and a cup of coffee and thinking about something, right? And supposedly what this is doing is it's saying, let's allow you more time to go read your book and to go think about stuff because we're doing that work in the background for you. But what happens is that background work consumes you, and you'll end up not doing the thinking and the necessary sense making that you're doing because you're dealing with all these students continuously bringing all the work to you that you want and that you've asked for, but which you actually can't be bothered to even look at. So the role that's being anticipated for an academic using AI properly in the future is you now become a director, okay? You become a director of a whole lot of agents working for you, and your job is to make sure that you check it properly after setting the goals. You set the goals very carefully. You check what's being done. You then do the synthesis and the conclusion and the work yourself. Okay. I'll leave it there because we haven't got much time, but I'm interested in your take on that being where AI academic and publishing work is going to take us.
Schizophrenic, that's the word.
Alistair, is your hand up again, bro? It's so nice to have someone who actually friggin' wants to engage.
So I think what's going to happen, right, and what I've suggested to my students, sort of jokingly, is they're generating everything they hand to me using AI, and then I receive it and I upload it to AI for marking, and that seems to take me a lot of time. So I suggested that they upload their AI generated material directly to AI for marking. So there's no human interaction at all. It's just AI marking itself. I'm not sure. Yeah.
No, that's happening. It's happening across the board, right? It's
Yeah.
happening with papers. It's happening with students. It's happening with lecturers. It's happening in commerce. It's happening across the world. It's AI and AI. And worse than that, just to say, Bru, at the moment, what's happened is AI is now training itself, right? The next phase of AI isn't human supervised training of AI. AI now through reinforcement learning is generating, it's enormously creative generation of all sorts of options and then improving it itself. It's AI working on AI improving itself. So we're entering into a very interesting world in terms of that. But yes, that is going down. Tigere?
Yes, Prof. Thank you so much, Hugo, for an interesting presentation. My engagement with you is that there was a question from the gentleman from Kenya who mentioned the issue of Grammarly, and your response was that there's no issues with Grammarly, etc., and cannot be regarded as AI. From experience and from research that has been done to date, there's evidence that there's a group of scholars that push the argument that AI assisted work is better than AI generated work, and that's where we should draw the line, to maintain academic integrity, right? However, when we bring in things like Grammarly, right, and Grammarly, you use it on AI assisted work, right? That's where Grammarly comes in. You write your work, you just want to edit it, right? But now research and evidence has shown that the process of actually enhancing your work with Grammarly, right? Grammarly, which is a lighter version of a language model or a chatbot. The process of enhancing that work actually converts that work into AI generated work, and that work ceases to be AI assisted work. I mean, from example, you've already mentioned that Grammarly gives you 2,000 corrections that you have to do, right? But in some instances, there is a whole paragraph that it gives you that option. And when you read that paragraph, you see that this paragraph actually reads better than what I have. And the moment you click it, it converts everything to a different different words altogether, but the meaning still remains yours. So what is your take on this dichotomy of AI assisted and AI generated work, where we have the tools for editing, Grammarly, Qboard, and stuff like that? They actually convert the AI, the human generated work into AI generated work. What
Okay.
would be your response? Yes.
So let's be clear. Firstly, Grammarly is evolving along with everything that's developing, and they've got to show current value, right? So they're going to start to offer more and more services. But where Grammarly sits on, and there's also huge debates between people who are like no assistance whatsoever to like, as long as you vet the stuff, doesn't matter that size space or whatever has generated it, it's still yours as long as you stand by it. So there's huge divisions at the moment. But in terms of where Grammarly sits, it sits on the editing side, doesn't sit on the generation of writing side. And used properly, I personally have no issues with it, and I've never experienced even the slightest smidgen of concern with theses which I've sent off and all that kind of stuff with that. Although, to be clear, the theses which I've sent off haven't said Grammarly, because I've assumed that you don't need to say that because it's an editing tool. But if we can leave it there and see where it goes. Rose, long time.
Oh, Wade, good to chat. And thanks for a lovely presentation as ever. It was excellent. I have a question. You know, earlier the discussion, I think it was Moti and yourself, you were saying that ultimately, as a supervisor, the responsibility rests with you. You know, if you're sending in student stuff for examination, like with previous plagiarism situations, you know, you have to stand by the fact that you had to review it. But if we're getting to a point, which clearly we are, that there's no definitive way that you as a supervisor can put your head on a block and say, this was AI generated. You know, if you've done all the obvious checks, I seem to spend my life checking references at the moment, but you know, if you've done all the obvious checks, and even if you pick up all the things, like you say, the M dashes and bulleted lists for Africa, I mean, how can a supervisor actually ultimately be found to not have done their job if they've done all those obvious things? So that's my first question. I have another one, but maybe you want to go at
Let's
that.
answer that one quickly. The way that you work that out, and you're right, that's why we're having these seminars, right? And there's a gray space there, and there's like a situation where you can fake it and it's hard to work out, and people are going to exploit it, and it could be in a couple of years' time all our heads on a block for those kinds of issues. So I haven't got a definitive answer there. All I can say is that I know that in terms of the best practice which works is you spend half an hour with your student and you talk to your student about the literature that they've read, or you talk to your student about the theoretical framework and how it applies to the data. You'll pick it up very quickly. And then my rule of thumb over there, if the student can genuinely engage at that point in an intelligent way that works, and I can see that they understand what's going on, that'll be my biggest defining criteria for do they move forward. It's almost like we've got to move back to a Viva kind of situation, you know, where we the student and the academic has to be able to carry it inside themselves. And if you carry it inside yourself, then then you're in a lot safer space. So as a supervisor, my recommendation would be like I was with you. What I basically knew was that you were carrying it inside yourself, and you knew more about it than I did. So I was deeply confident that you'd done your own work.
Can I follow very quickly
Yes,
with another one?
sure.
And it's more a comment than a question. I was recently listening to a panel, you know, a recording of a panel of experts talking about all of these things and where it's going. And I thought there was a very interesting comment that was made, and that was the guy was saying, and he's in one of these big, you know, AI type development houses, and he was saying his biggest concern is where the future lies if we get into this cognitive offloading, where at the moment in inverted commas, we're fine because, and this is to reiterate your point you started with, because we have the knowledge base, and so we can interrogate what we're getting out, and we're not necessarily, offloading all that cognitive thinking because we already have the basis. But as we move on, if our students keep offloading that cognitive load, they are not going to build the neural pathways that allow them to do critical thought.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a very, very interesting concept. So even if we're going to allow our students to use these tools, we have to ensure that critical engagement. And I think our policy tries to speak to that, I must admit.
Well, in the longer run, the way it's going to go, and I can tell you this, is we're going to start to use AI as a monitoring tool and as a tutor tool. And what's going to happen is the students have to be in a space where AI is not generating the work for them. AI is the track tool which the university keeps of their full university career, which tracks how they're actually doing the work and how they're engaging. That's where we go in the near future. Faisal. Good. No? Gone? Questions? Any other questions? Question and answer? No? Comments? Yeah. Are we good to go, guys? Is that after 2 o'clock?
So Wayne, look, we're after 2. You can stay on until 1:15. But before you do, I think I must thank you on behalf of the College of Humanities for really giving us a insightful presentation on how we can use these AI tools in our publishing work. I think every one of us here will admit that we are walking away with, with new knowledge, right? And some really some really good and excellent practical knowledge of how we can actually adopt these AI tools when we're publishing. There's a lot of food for thought. I think your presentation has really sparked a lot of questions, comments around where we're going as an institution. And I will say that a lot of the questions that you're posting, and Wayne, if he has time, we'll go back and see if he can respond to some of you. But it's clear that we need to do a lot more of these sessions to upskill us. So really, we want to say thank you so much to Wayne for coming through to do the webinar today. So thank you so much, Wayne. I think let's give him a quick round of applause and lots of love because he put so much of himself into this at such short notice. So thanks, Wayne. And you're free to stay on, colleagues, until 1:15. If Wayne is available now, over to you, Wayne. You can continue with your answering some of the questions from colleagues. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much. It's always, I hate, just to be clear, I hate doing this kind of stuff. It's not my favorite activity until I do it. And then I realize just how much fun and how important it is to actually do this kind of work. And also to say, unlike some of my students when we do online sessions, I really deeply appreciate the fact that when I was talking to you guys, there was stuff coming back, which really helps. But anyway, that said, if you want to stay around and ask questions, I'll just hang out for a couple of minutes. I think Murthy's already gone. But if I haven't answered a question, you want to ask it, please stay. Otherwise, have a good afternoon.
Hello, Prof. It's Jonathan here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I asked the question on the chat. Where do we get those? You spoke about them agents, research agents. I'd like to try them out.
Yeah. Okay. So let's be clear on this one. There's a couple of things that are going on over here. There's a bit of a learning curve, number one. So when they initially came out, Jonathan, just to say that the promise was huge, eh? So basically what they were saying was, what you could do was you could get an agent and it can do this. It takes over your whole computer and then starts to do the work on your computer for you. So for example, if you need to do some coding and you're not sure how coding works and you've got a coding app on your computer, what it'll do is it'll say, just like, you know, when you get an oak, you're struggling with your computer and someone takes over your computer and then starts to do stuff on your computer, right? You can do that at the moment. It'll do that stuff. But the issue is that the learning curve is still very high. So people who are trying to do it, they're finding it clunky. They are finding it's not delivering on what it promises. You often get stuck. And then when you get stuck, you don't know how to work it. You've also got to start using what are called APIs. Basically, it's a situation where you spend a little bit of money to get some credit. And then what happens is they give you dedicated space for you to work with stuff, which responds to you. And it's not expensive, but it does cost money. And it's not in the usual zone of using the normal ChatGPT interface, which is very simple. So my recommendation to you would just be to go onto YouTube, not onto AI or anything like that. Just go onto YouTube and ask in the search bar, just ask for AI agents, and then just look up some videos on that, and that'll give you a guide on it to show you how it actually does work. But it is still slightly ahead in the future, just to be clear.
100%. Thank you so much, Prof.
Kululeko?
Yeah, hi, Prof. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Hey, very interesting session. I'm a librarian, Prof. First of all, I use AI a lot myself, but I've noticed that it makes you lazy. I don't know if that's what makes you move away from your computer at some point and read your paper manually and analyze it manually. Maybe that was the case. But my question is, as librarians, as academic librarians, we buy resources for you guys to do research. Our databases and books that we use for teaching and learning. And now, how do you know that the information that is generated by this AI are academic?
Okay, so 2 points. The first point is you've got to have the discipline. You've just got to have the discipline in yourself to use the tool properly. It's got to do with discipline. It's got to do with making sure you get enough exercise, you get enough sleep, you spend time actually thinking about stuff. What I found with the latest version of ChatGPT, the 5 version, what you can do is you can ask it to be permanently on deep thinking mode. And what that means is when you get it to do something, the freaking thing takes half a minute to a minute to a minute and a half sometimes to respond. And what I'm finding is that ebb and flow gives me a chance to think about it, make sense of it, go over it myself. So it's not working so quickly anymore. You know, the terrible nature of the older versions of the LLMs was you'd ask a question and it friggin' spurt out the answer, like immediately. And then you would half read that, but you'd be on to the next question and you'd ask the next question. And I found that it was forcing me into a zone where I was working too quickly. Whereas the latest versions, if you put them on a deep think mode, are taking half a minute to a minute, and that ebb and flow gives you a chance to actually think about stuff. As for the generation of data, and there's just sludge going on at the moment. We don't know what to do about it. A whole lot of the stuff is fake, made up. That's why respected journals and respected research and data which is being generated by students where you can genuinely track the data, or by academics who are doing genuine actual stuff, which is gathering stuff, has become incredibly valuable. But understand it's also become valuable for the AI dudes who want to get hold of that and grind it and use it. So it's a it's a very strange space you're in.
Thank you.
Cool. Fazana and Faisal, either. Alistair.
Bro, good afternoon, bro.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, are you tracking us from two places at once? Are you split onto a phone and a computer?
Yeah, Prof. Good afternoon.
Faisal, switch off one of your devices.
Okay. Looking at the genetic AI, I want to find out how do we distinguish the prompts that enable us to get an idea to proceed writing from a total AI generated mode. Like Gemini AI, for example, it literally will give you an idea as to how to proceed on any matter. So how do we distinguish that?
Sorry, Faisal, I'm just going to interrupt there because I've made sense of your question, I hope, but you really are echoing across the mountains over here. Look, firstly, just to say that the prompt story has become a key part of the way that you should be doing your work, because the better you work with the prompt, the more you can specify exactly what you want, and the more you can control not only the hallucinations, but the fact that it's working as your assistant. So one of the ways that I do it, and this depends on who you are, is when I use Google Studio, and just as a matter of note to say that Google Studio currently is basically the best AI LLM you can use, and it's completely for free. And it's got hardly any restrictions on it. So if you want a free version that's really good, use Google AI Studio, not the LM one. And what they've got, once you learn how to use it, is they've got a top bar, which has got a prompt device in it. And if you put in a very clear prompt at that level, it will do that for all the work that you do underneath that. And that really does help, and it sticks to that. It really does help with the control and the hygiene of what you're doing underneath that. So learning a little bit about how prompts work is really important. But just to make one final note there, and to say it used to be that prompts were a really important way of getting AI to improve the way it was working with you. Currently, that's not true anymore. AIs have become very intuitive, and they track what you're doing based on just a couple of hints. And they often they understand what the context is better than you do, or what they'll do is they'll ask you a set of questions to get it clear. So there's different ways you can do this kind of thing. And one last response, if you use ChatGPT Deep Research to do a topic, what happens is you can ask it to do the topic, and then before it goes into the topic, it'll then ask you like 10, 15 questions. Do you want it like this? Do you want it like that? Do you want this? Do you want that? And only after that will it go do the research. And that kind of teaches you this importance of how we work with prompts. Fazana?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for engaging with us on such a personal level. It is appreciated, as opposed to just the PowerPoints, although we do appreciate those as well. I really enjoyed this time, and just getting to learn so much. My question is on a practical level, I'm an early master's, just is it worthwhile subscribing or paying for a subscription to, say, Claude versus using free versions of ChatGPT for editing purposes? Have you noticed, a difference in the outputs that you get from the paid version versus the free versions that are available now?
So I would recommend a paid version. And there's because the Google Studio is free, I wouldn't recommend you subscribing to that. But both the ChatGPT and Claude have a key thing which really helps you with the master's thesis, and that is it's got huge memory. So what happens is if you're working with it diligently and properly, what you're doing is you're starting to upload all the papers that you're working with, and you're starting to upload all the data that you're working with, and you're starting to upload your own sense making of it, and you're starting to then ask questions which engage with it and think about it. Effectively, if you use it properly, you've got a supervisor on steroids. Okay. So it's very worthwhile, but at the same time, it's incredibly poisonous and seductive and dangerous. So the only way that I overcome that is what I do is I just continuously, when I'm working, basically notebook.
Yeah.
Make the notes, work with them. Afterwards, after you've made the notes and you've got all that stuff, freaking take a photograph of it and send it to ChatGPT. It'll make sense of it and it'll work it in, right? So there's ways of doing it. But as a sense-making mechanism, it is a genuine thing, if you want to use it properly, that it's really worthwhile. So I'd strongly recommend it used properly. I'd strongly condemn it used badly.
Yes. No, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
Cool. We're almost done. Faisal, are you still wanting to say something? Is it Rose?
Yeah, Wayne,
Rose,
I was just
you're going to
thinking.
say goodbye. Are you going to say goodbye to us?
No, I don't know about that. I'll leave the honor to you, Wayne. But no, I'm just thinking, we were chatting about where this is all going, and already there's posts being written, etc., about poisoned data and how that plays a role. And, earlier, I think it was Alistair was saying, requests to like have site photos of data collection practices and whatever. Well, we can make all of those up using AI as well.
Yeah. No, Rose, it's worse. So let's be clear that it's good and bad, right? So currently what's happening is, in terms of getting the next level of AI development, which we need, it's one of these things where if we get this thing right, it could be the thing which destroys humanity, but also saves humanity, all that kind of rubbish.
Yeah.
But the key point is to say is what AI is currently doing is it is synthetically generating data continuously. And when I say synthetically generating data, I don't mean like 100,000 versions. It's generating billions of versions of the data that's needed in a billion alternative spaces that it then operates, which it then runs and trains itself on. Right, so I just want you to think about it as being a situation where in the human space, data is getting poisoned or it's being syntheticized, right? And there's dangers involved there, which is why it becomes really precious to have the journals and the research which is properly vetted. And sure, there's bad actors everywhere. There've been bad actors. There've been oaks in archaeology who put together a skull of one thing with another thing and then claimed it was like the pit. What was that story? The Pitburn oak invented a skull which they thought was a Cro-Magnon man. We've been faking stuff for centuries. It's a part of the human condition, right? And AI makes it happen. But just to be clear, synthetic data is becoming the new oil, not the data that humans are producing, because AI has already sucked all the data it can from us human beings, and it's now using that as a level step upwards to now generate its own data.
Yeah, a good place for philosophical chats another day, I think. But cheers, it was really good touching base again. Thanks.
Yeah, always. Cool, guys. Can we call it? Can we call it there? Thanks for the time. If you they will send the PowerPoint and the presentation to you. But if you do have extra questions, or if you want to know something like, which you want to kind of chat about, it's just, my email. It's hugow@UKZN. It's like all our emails at UKZN. So you're welcome to reach out to me, and I'll try and respond.